recessing a regular meeting for public hearing. May I have a motion to recess for that public hearing?
I'll motion to recess for public hearing.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. So now we're down to public hearing, and I'm missing Doug Dowd. This is your first one, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
Cannot see the presentation here, so I'm going to look up here when I'm ready to see the slide, okay? So I'm going to present to you the FY22 adopted budget, or it's not adopted, so you guys adopt it, but the proposed budget. So on the overview page, it just talks about what the budget is, and that this is a legislative thing that we do. We're going to talk a little bit about your tax rates. This includes our M&O, Classroom Site Fund, Prop 301 money, Prop 123 money. If you go to the next slide, where is really exciting, talks about what the budget entails. And most of our budget here in Washington, 89% actually, is salaries and benefits for our staff. And that is awesome. That's the majority of our budget, goes to those things. And that's great. We spend about almost $8 million on supplies. Purchase services pays for services for special ed, OT, PT, speech pathologists, some other special services that we have to outsource. Usually that's psychologists as well through the special ed department. If you go to the next slide, you get to see a nice graph. This just kind of gives you a pictorial view of the slide I just went over. Again, 89% of what we spend is on benefits and salaries, and that is awesome because we're employing people in the community. We're getting high quality staff with our dollars so that we can be effective. As you know, I was a teacher, and I'm like really invested in teaching and making sure that we have the most high quality teachers and staff that we can possibly have. And I really think that in my last 2 months here, I've seen that here in Washington. It's phenomenal. On the next slide, it just breaks out how we're spending our dollars with relationship to our programs. So you can see that 68% of our dollars are spent in the regular ed classroom, 23% is spent in special ed, 5% transportation, 3% in your DSAG budget, and K3 reading program, 1%. That actually funds K3 reading teachers. That's a great resource of money, and that money is allocated to make sure that we can have the right appropriate sized classes that we need in K3, where it's really important to have small class sizes, to have interventions to make sure that kids are on level in reading by the time they leave third grade. It's extremely important. All right, on the next slide, just talks about basically a slide of our classroom spending report. You probably have seen this report from the Auditor General's office. This gives you kind of an overview of what we're expecting that classroom spending report to show in the future. And about 70%, a little over 70% of our dollars go to the classroom. That means they're not in administration. That means they're going directly to students to affect students. They're going directly to teachers. That is a huge amount. I can tell you I've looked at a lot of classroom spending reports over my years, and this is a very high percentage. This is awesome to see. When we talked about it today, I was just amazed at the classroom spending here in Washington. It's awesome. That just means that dollars are going directly to students. All right, on the next page, we're just going to talk a little bit about our maintenance and operation budget. And that's like our major budget, and that's where we pay for most everything other than capital items. About $800,000 of that is transferred to capital. Capital buys buses, buildings, big projects. That's what we spend our capital money on. About $18.5 million in $18.5 million in override funding. We have about $5 million in our DSAG budget, our desegregation funding, and that basically helps ELL students that have a second language. That's what that money goes towards. We're going to have about an estimated carryover, about $16 million, which is phenomenal. Of that $16 million, about $7 million is already allocated in salaries and to pay off our bond debt.
If I could, Kimberly, on the first bullet point, of the capital dollars, DA is the term for capital, we take about 10% and use it for salaries.
Yeah,
so
for
that
salary.
800,000 goes to salaries.
Yep.
I don't know if that was clear, so I just want to make that clear. So,
and that was actually voted on by IBN. So that went through the IBN process. They made that decision to transfer that money. so that we could have that money available for salaries instead of other things. I think that that's a good place to put that money as well. All right. On the next slide, we'll talk about our federal and state grants. So I wanted to bring up, I wasn't sure if you were aware, but when I was studying all of this, I noticed that you get Title VI money, which is Indian education money, and that's a federal grant. Also, I noticed that we have a percentage of Navajo students in this district. I worked on the Navajo Nation for many years, taught Navajo students. I was really excited to hear that we had Navajo students and that we're supporting those Navajo students. One of the things that that money is buying is a Navajo language program to help with the students learning their native language, which I think is so important. I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was something very unique about Washington. That money also includes all of our ESSER money. And as you're aware, we got about $68 million in ESSER 3 that we are planning on. We are going to have a task force together to help make sure that we spend that money appropriately and in the correct way. So that money does include our ESSER money. I just wanted to point that out. Our state money would include our results-based funding. We get results-based funding because we have some high poverty schools that perform very well. And we get that money because of that. So that is a great funding source that shows that we're doing such a great job here in Washington that we get that extra money for that. All right, on the next page, it's our capital budget. So as Dr. Stanton said, DUH is what it's called. That's the acronym. There's lots of acronyms in education, but we call it DUH. So we don't really get that much. We get about $8.7 million in capital funding. But because we have carryover, we have about $19 million in our capital budget, which is awesome. Some of that's allocated to HVAC systems. That we have schools that need HVAC systems. They're processing out of their lifespan, and we need to get them replaced so that we have air conditioning for our students and teachers. I can tell you as a teacher, teaching in a classroom with no air conditioning is not a fun thing. Also, we're going to spend some of that money on Chromebooks. We need to replace some Chromebooks and make sure that we're having up-to-date technology, not letting those expire. Also, some of this money will be in partnership with the School Facilities Board. They're doing some work on Mountain View and Sunny Slope schools. Part of working with the School Facilities Board is that we would give it's called in-kind money, and some of that capital money is in-kind money to work with the SFB to get these bigger projects done. They do roofs and things for our school's big projects. All right, now we're to the fun stuff, the tax rate. So this budget includes a tax rate on the first page of the budget. It talks all about the tax rate. Something that's unique about Maricopa County is where your DSEG tax rate goes. So on the budget forms, you'll see it's in one place. Maricopa County moves it to another place. That's fine. There was a lawsuit that allows them to do that. So it's in your secondary tax rate in the budget forms. Maricopa County will put it in our primary rate. So if you go to the next slide, then this kind of talks about our tax rate here. It kind of breaks it out so that you can kind of see where it's at. So it's basically, for the general fund, 2.0414. For our adjacent ways pays for anything that's adjacent to a road, like sidewalks is a good thing, fire lanes it pays for. I know we have some pretty big fire lane projects for some schools that those fire lanes need to be redone, and that's where that money goes for things like that. And then, of course, we have our desegregation budget. That's at 0.3349 for a total of 2.4357. And that's per $100,000 per home, so that works out to about $243.57 per 100,000. So that's your primary tax rate. So then your secondary tax rate includes, basically for Washington, that would be your M&O override and your bonds. So also if you had a capital override, that capital override would be in that rate as well. We don't have one at the moment. So your override money though, your M&O override money is salaries. That pays for teachers, that pays for aides, that pays for people in the classroom. So that M&O override is really important to our district because we use that money to staff our schools. Also, and then our bonds, of course, pay for our big capital projects that we have going on. So that total tax rate is 2.1287 or $212.87 per $100,000 per home. All right, so with all that said, how do you figure out what your tax rate is? So your tax rate is the full cash value of your home, the assessed value rate, which is set by state law, and then the levy. And then that's how you figure out what your estimated tax rate's going to be. On the next page, the page I hear you all been waiting for, is to figure out what our tax rate's going to be this year. It's actually gone down, which is good for the taxpayers. I think we're going to be fine with our budget. Even though it went down, I think we're great. We have lots of funding right now, so I think we're in really good shape. So as you can see, if you look at the 3-year trend, it has gone from 2.4618 in 1920 to 2.1214 in 22. And so if you look down at the very bottom in the very right-hand corner, it's about $458.50 per 100,000. All right, I know I'm a fast talker, so I am done with my presentation. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Board. Any
Oh.
questions?
I apologize. Right now, we're in the public hearing, so we have opened the chat for the
Forgive me.
public. We are live now, and we're and going live on YouTube. So we just want to wait a couple minutes and
Thank
see
you.
if we get any questions from our community.
Thank you.
If I could, Ms. Tucker, we were live during actually Kimberly's presentation, right? So
Yes, I want to verify exactly. Were we at the very beginning? Yes. So the whole presentation was live on YouTube, and so the chat is open. And again, we just want to wait a couple minutes to give the community an opportunity to ask any questions.
Thank you. Kimberly, nice job, by the way.
Oh, thank you. This is the ultimate in wait time.
A no
I'm
so
very
far.
patient.
What we can do, we could recess and go into the action item, and if there's questions, which I'm assuming there would be, if something pops up, we can be alerted, and with your discretion, we could still go back and read that question and get it answered.
Thank you. So in that scenario, we'll go ahead and, with everybody's permission, we'll go ahead and reconvene the regular meeting. And I don't need a motion for that.
Thank you.
Now we'll
Thank
go
you.
into the,
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to come right back up.
you were doing so well.
Sorry.
Okay, so now we're into action discussion item, the approval of the adopted expenditure budget for fiscal year 2021. We can entertain questions before the motion, correct? Okay. Okay, so with that, board members, any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Thank you. Great presentation,
Oh,
very
thank
clear.
you.
I looked at it before, and I really appreciate the clarity, and your explanation was great. So, but I do have some rookie questions, just
Sure.
because I'm still a rookie, so I ask these questions. I assume that I understand what a carryover means. But if you could just explain that term
Sure.
to me as you use it here.
Sure, that's just money that we haven't spent in prior fiscal years and this fiscal year that we're just carrying over. That's normal for a school district to do. Of course, you always want to have money for a rainy day. And if you have big projects, sometimes you're saving money so that you can tackle those big projects. Like, for instance, if you had to build a new school, or if you knew that you had a huge HVAC project that you had to do, which we do. And I think they were planning on that, but now that we have ESSER money, we're kind of have a little more leeway. But they really were, Dr. Stanton's shaking his head, they really were planning on having to replace all these HVACs, and that's a lot of money. And that's what the carryover's for.
Okay. Are there limits to carryover?
There are no limits now. There used to be limits. It used to be a 4% limit to carry over.
M&O carry forward though 15% normally?
Yeah, so there's like normal amounts that people carry forward, about 15%.
Okay, that's typically that's just
Yeah.
sort of an industry guideline.
Yes.
Practice for M&O.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I had a question about, you mentioned the school facilities board.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just not familiar with
So,
that.
so the school facilities board is a group that has had quite the history. So a long time ago, we used to school districts used to just get their capital money, and then we would kind of spend it. And then things were happening, and schools weren't getting fixed. It wasn't this district specifically. It just schools weren't getting fixed because districts needed a ton of money to fix things, and they just didn't have that money. We had carryover limits before. It was kind of a mess. So basically what ended up happening was this group was formed. It's been in kind of many different spots throughout the year. And I think right now it's still under the governor's office. I think going to move to another office. But anyway, they get a ton of money. And that money you apply to them when you need new roof, or you need HVAC systems, or you need roofing's their big thing that they do. You apply to them, they have the money, they grant it to you, and then you can do your project.
Okay.
Mike Kramer's not here this evening, but Mike and his team does a magnificent job of applying for those. I think we're about $2.5 million, if I recall, in SFB grants. You typically have to apply currently when things are failing, or
Correct.
really in the, kind of, so, and then it's a different time, we can have a different discussion of how we got there. I think it's under Andy Tobin now.
It is.
And so,
Andy.
yeah, I thought so. So, but anyway, the reason is we've been very successful with getting about $2.5 million. A lot of it we have used for roofs. We've used them for hot water pumps. Some of the stuff, the big tickets are the roofs, but he actually puts in for many things. So we've been fairly successful.
Yeah, I think very successful.
Okay. Thank you. Like I said, I'm just learning.
Sure.
a lot, so I appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Ms. Whaley?
And just with the school facilities board, I'm not sure if I completely have this right, but it also feeds into the fact that we aren't getting our full funding of capital.
We are now.
We're
We're fully restored now.
But before we weren't, so you
Correct.
kind of had to go to them to ask for money that was already owed to you and hope that they would give you some. But now it's a little bit different, but they played a really big role in kind of holding some of the money that people needed to do some of the projects.
Yes.
We used to have to go through the school facilities board. In fact, if Mike was here, they require us to do a checklist for all the facilities, and that's, I think, what created Mike to go out and create the model that he has. That's phenomenal in regards to how they do things. But they didn't have money for many, many, many years, and it used to frustrate me that we would be required to do their checklist,
Yep.
and yet we can't get any money. It's in a better position today than it was over the past couple of years.
Definitely.
But there's a lot of history.
A lot.
Yeah, fortunately, it's under Andy Tobin's guidance, and so that's positive.
I've seen vast improvements.
If I can, Mike's team's credit, as you said, Mr. Adams, during the years where you would put in and there wasn't any funding, actually Washington did continue to put in, and that helped us, the school facilities board, understand the scope of the need of at least districts that did it. Some districts stopped doing it. I always thought that was a little odd, because if you don't submit, at some point they would get the money. So it is a complex process. There's a lot of need in the state of Arizona, as you said, Ms. Whaley. But this is the current process as we have. And again, I'd like to give kudos to your team and Mike's team. We've been fairly successful, again, but you typically have to be at a failed type of situation. Hopefully we'll get to the point where they can move it a little bit beyond that, but that's the current process.
We had, I remember talking to Mike going like, exact same scenario, why are we doing this if we're not getting any money? And he looked at me and he said, is it a bad thing that we're inspecting our schools? I go, that was good. Yeah, so it was really good. Ms. Whaley?
Yeah, so my second question, if we can go to the slide with the tax rates. Just some clarification, because I know we have on there that there's the levy tax, there's a first and secondary, and then there's the homeowner's tax. I was just wondering if you could point out which tax would adhere to all taxpayers in the school boundaries and which ones only to homeowners? Or is it all only to homeowners?
My understanding is this is a homeowner's tax.
Okay,
Both
so the
primary and
primary
secondary.
tax and the secondary tax is a homeowner's tax, and
Correct.
then the levy is also the homeowner. So these
Correct.
are this tax is only to people who own homes in the district.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you rent, they also pay, it's through your rent or whatever, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question as well.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for the presentation.
Oh,
I
sure.
love your energy. Especially talking about budget stuff, that's very impressive. So the question was, I remember when Kathy told us before about the DSEG money, and that is something that's going to go away. Is that-
Correct.
And so that 5 million will be gone something.
Ms. Abbott Biardi, Mr. President, member of the board, it's a levy that we have. Washington has, in my tenure here, we've taken it down. It was about 6.3, and we got here about 5, but it depends on the needs of the district. So, for example, Ms. Inez's department is a big chunk of that, so I wouldn't want to say it's going to go away forever. I would say that Washington's always looked at it to make sure we're using it for our needs. I can't say that it would go away necessarily, but again, Kathy and now Danny and the team will look at, if we don't have a need for these, then of course you wouldn't want to levy, but we do have the language, the translators you see, there's other needs because we have a lot of diverse languages, so that's a big part of it, just to let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually most of that budget.
I'm sorry, what did you?
That's actually most of that budget.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was the salary, I'm looking at the thing here, with the money that's the carryover, and 4 million is already allocated to salary, and then 3.2 already allocated pay off debt of that 16 million. So the carryover is starting now at less that amount of the 16?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
It is a great question, Ms. Biardi, Abbott Biardi. We did have staff members sometimes that see that, and they don't realize that through IBN and other things, we've actually allocated over 7.3 million of that already. And we have to remind folks of that you just can't look at the number. You have to say what's already been, budgeted and allocated.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Tucker?
Yes, thank you, President Adams. We did receive a question via the YouTube chat, so if you allow Ms. Fernandez to read it, she has access back there.
Thank you. Ms. Fernandez? What does the desegregation mean to the funding?
What does it mean to the funding?
Yes.
I think, again, as we mentioned, we use that currently in Washington Elementary School District for our language. That was the purpose of what we received DSEG many moons ago. We received our DSEG letters and information. It was over the language. And so that's why we use it for language services for our kids, parents, and BSL, yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
ma'am.
Mr. President. So to make sure I understand, so desegregation is a specific levy that we're allowed to use because of the population of students we have. And so we have to have that approved by whatever entity approves that. So not all districts can have that. It just depends on your population and the needs of that population that allows you to then pass that levy on to your taxpayers.
Yes, in a nutshell, that is kind of desegregation was a federal actually issue many moons ago, and so the districts that were levied the need to focus on certain populations, Phoenix Union, Glendale Union, ourselves. There's Glendale L. There's a whole bunch of districts that but it was based on and is based on the needs of your population.
Good. Okay. So with that, and again, nice job.
Oh, thank you.
You're not excused yet.
Okay.
Just kidding, just kidding. All right, so.
I'll wait till you vote.
Thank you. So with that, may I have a motion? Request, let's see. So.
I move that we adopt the 2021-22 expenditure budget and approve and verify the desegregation budget supplement and verification report.
Thank you very much. And may I have a second, please?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. So that brings us to the COVID update. Dr. Stanton.
Mr. President, members of the board, members of the audience, as we have been now doing for over 15 months, and actually Dr. Bailey pointed out 452 communications she's actually sent on a daily basis. Dr. Bailey, well done. I don't know if people know that, actually. We will be doing the update on COVID. So Dr. Bailey, would you please update related to our reopening of schools, COVID-19 update?
Thank you. I'm actually going to talk about 3 different areas. One, we still have students on campus and tell you a little bit about that. Dr. Stanton talked a little bit about that we have professional learning next week, actually, and I will also give you an update on our safe return to in-person types of strategies that we're looking at. Our students on campus, we still have students in kids space. So if parents need care, childcare, we still have students in 2 of our schools, and that will go through July 30th. Then they take a week off, and then we start with kids space in all schools coming back again. So we still have those kiddos on our campus. Next week, we begin with new principals, new administrators. On Monday, we have our 9 new administrators that you actually approved within the last couple of months. And we have 3 new principals and 6 new assistant principals. And we will start with training with them in leadership beginning on Monday. On Tuesday, all of our other site administrators are back on campus. And just like Ms. Peterson was saying, there's been a lot of work during the summer. So we are then actually working with our principals on the work with the curriculum guides that have been modified and revamped, with our assessment calendar. We're going to actually share the panorama results for our students. We will be sharing academic results that our assessment department has actually put together. So all of these professional learning within the next week and a half is really to prepare for our teachers to come back on August 2nd, and then for our students to come back on August 9th. And then we are in the process of really looking at our safe return to in-person opening. We have met with our committee, and we're really looking at continuing mitigation strategies, the mitigation strategies of enhanced cleaning, of the use of the air scrubbers, continuing with that. We're going to continue with social distancing when feasible, the frequent hand washing, having isolation areas again on campus, as well as quarantining if needed, and then the contact tracing. So all of that will continue. But as has been very much in the news with the recently approved budget provision that was signed by the governor, all counties and including school districts are prohibited from requiring students or staff to wear face coverings during school hours and on school property. So that is a guidance that we're under. What we are seeking counsel from is whether the students have to wear face coverings on buses. Right now, there is still a guideline, a federal guideline, that is saying until September that we had to have students have masks. So we are looking into that to see if that continues on. Some of the other areas that we're looking at making decisions on are sports. What will be our sports for the fall? Facility usage. Right now we have facility usage in outside types of areas, but are we going to allow indoor facility usage for outside vendors? What about visitors and volunteers? So we need to look at that. Right now, visitors and volunteers have not been on our campuses for about 15 months. So those are different areas that we're starting to continue to seek some guidance from and look at what are the parameters and guidelines. That's the end of my update.
And if I could also, I know that Dr. Bailey, we think we're going to plan to bring our reopening plan to the board at the next meeting as well.
Right.
So.
We are also, if I can.
Oh, please.
I'm sorry, if I can just interject. We also just received information that CDC is going to come out with guidelines, they believe, for schools tomorrow, so that will directly impact what our reopening plan looks like.
Excuse me. Does CDC have jurisdiction over they're just recommendations, correct?
As Mr. President, members of the board, members of the audience, that is why we talked the legal counsel discussion, that some of that issue was a CDC and like the buses, and so we're following up with that. So that's why we asked legal counsel to help us with the idea of what jurisdiction compared to, say, state decisions and things like that. So that's why we had to ask. The bus is the best example I have, because right now the current is, by the federal, is that kids are wearing these the face coverings on the bus, yet then they're optional at school. So we're asking, how can we help that? Other districts are also, when we talk to our attorneys, actually other districts have asked the exact same question, because it's something we need help with, because again, it's one of those jurisdictional things. So,
Thank you. So you're getting counsel. Thank you.
yep.
Are we asking as we go, or are we going around all of the speakers? Okay. I guess we're asking as we go. So will, part of what they had said in the new governor's thing is that the mask will stay in place, and you can't put them in unless that's the recommendation of the county health, but they didn't mention the CDC. So that's what you're waiting for, to see if the state will recognize the CDC?
Ms. Whaley, members of the board, members of the audience, actually in our discussion, my understanding, and again, this is for all of us reading, is that with the legislative budget bill that's passed, that's law, so it's not necessarily waiting for Maricopa County. Our understanding is that, based on the decision, that masks are optional for staff and students at the current time. Now, we are waiting tomorrow to hopefully hear from Maricopa County, because Maricopa County, and they did say they'll start the meetings up next Thursday. They hadn't had any for about a month or so, but my understanding is that that's now what
No, what I had said is, I understand that it's law, but I thought in the law it said that districts could only reinstate a mask mandate if that was at the direction of the state or county health officials.
I can look at that tomorrow. I apologize. I don't have
Okay.
an answer sitting here now.
Okay, so I just wanted to see if that was part of the law, if it could only be state or county, or if they would recognize the CDC. I know that you're going to be bringing the plan ahead of time. In the past, it's been a long time, and it was a different board when we said, hey, we're going to let you kind of change the plan as you want. We'll give our input. So next board meeting, we won't really have any say to change it, because that's the last board meeting, and less than a week later, the schools will reopen. So can you talk a little bit about, where community and others can give input to that plan once it's presented?
Ms. Whaley, members of the board, members of the audience, if the board ever wanted to have a special board meeting with a single subject, we could always do that. That's been done before. So, but our regular meetings, yes, are certainly monthly, or every 2 weeks. So depending on the month.
Okay, thank you. Just because I understand that we can't mandate it, but there are still things that we can highly encourage, and we can have a conversation about things like that.
Actually, and Ms. Whaley, if I could, the CDC currently still, and will be recommending that the CDC still currently, again, we'll see what they say tomorrow, but when unvaccinated and vaccinated people are around each other, they do recommend that people wear masks. And so we'll be certainly recommending that, and Pam actually has that for our, again, we have a planned thing to let our parents know tomorrow about the mask being optional. We'll see what the CDC says to see if it changes it, but Pam's ready to go with it, and again, we'll let folks know. But again, we're going to recommend, based on the fact that, again, when you're around unvaccinated and vaccinated people, that is the recommendation from the CDC currently. And so, again, we can't force anybody, but the idea would be that would be, and we are anticipating, at least the last information we had is that the Pfizer is supposedly going to have their testing done, and they think they'll have approval for two-year-olds and up by September. So we've got this window that we're going to be dealing with in Arizona, August and September, and obviously to vaccinate, 18,000 kids is going to take some time. Dr. Bailey was a part of it the last time we did it, so we'll certainly be ready and prepared, and all of us will have to take on a massive undertaking of vaccinating many kids, or at least giving them the option to be vaccinated. So again, but we're going to be talking that, and we'll put that out there as well, because that's exactly what the CDC says now.
And last question, and I guess this is probably for both Dr. Stanton and President Adams, is will that plan, the discussion of the reopening plan, be listed as an individual agenda item, or is it going to be under COVID update?
Ms. Whaley, members of the board, members of the audience, as we have done in the past, we'll make it a single standing agenda item.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, as we've done around the members of the board, members of the audience, as we have done in the past, I'll turn it over to Steve Mattingly to do the staffing update related to COVID.
All right. Governing Board President, Governing Board members, Dr. Stanton, and members of the crowd, our guests out there. Just a brief update on staffing. Before I do that, I'd like to just share the hard work by our principals, our other administrators, directors, and coordinators, and other people that supervise labor that are responsible for hiring the best and the brightest, are working hard and being diligent with actually doing that. And we are making some quality gain with our staffing. I am really proud and excited to see that, you know, we're less than 20, around 18 vacant positions in our staffing when it comes to staffing our schools with our certified teachers. So that's really exciting. I can honestly say and know for a fact that not a lot of districts are in the position we're in. So I'm really excited to brag about that and make sure I give kudos to the appropriate people that are out there trying to find the best and brightest and processing that.
Ms. Brown, absolutely. Thank you for noting that as well. And then I will say, because one of our principals here, is the schools also start to plan for contingencies just in case. I mean, we continue to hire, but that is one thing. I see Tracy, she's always been very good at that. So again, we already work on that. And again, your team's a tremendous asset to that work. So thank you very much. Ms. Moore is on vacation, and she did say the last update she gave us was just a few weeks ago, and so the curricular work still continues. As you heard Dr. Bailey mention, we will be at PLA going over a lot of that work with the principals and instructional coaches. Mr. O'Brien wasn't able to be here, but I will do his update. Just one moment, please. So this time of year, because we are going back to school and we will have many kids on our face-to-face, we normally give the board an update on projects. And so we will make sure that Mr. O'Brien gets the project list. We have the detailed list of every school, but some general ones is district-wide, there are surveillance systems that are being installed on all campuses that do not currently have some of those. On schedule with the training and being scheduled for our school leaders, that's one thing we've been working on. And back to what Kimberly said earlier, that's what some of that money we use is when we have a need and we need to carry it over, we hold it because there are projects that take time. You can't do it in one fell swoop. We are doing, as Kimberly mentioned, we are doing new fire lanes at Richard E. Miller and Tumbleweed, and they are on schedule. We're also doing playground equipment projects at Acacia, Cactus Wren, Chaparral, Desert View, and Sunset. Again, we'll get you all these for everybody. If you're a new board member, Mike is exceptionally detailed, and so we will get his long list to you, and you can certainly ask him questions, or start with Danny, and then and go to him. School-wide flooring at Abraham Lincoln, Cactus Wren, and Ironwood are all on schedule. And then our school's lobby security, as you see, our upgrades we've been doing over time. Choya Middle School has been completed as well. So if you've been to some of our schools, you see the single entrance and the egress, the buttons, and all that type of stuff along the way. So I'll get you the whole list, but we are on target for many of our projects that have been this summer. It's funny. And anything else, Dr. Bailey? Because I know you talked to Mike. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, he has a list of all.
And we'll make sure you get the long list from every school, but this was the highlights. I asked him, would you please give me the highlights so I could highlight with the board? And then finally, for myself, if you would, Ms. Tucker, thank you. So today we got our update a little bit later in the afternoon, but for our district, our cases per 100,000 are up about 10 points from 46.56 to 56.77, and our percent positivity went from 8.29 to about 9.17. As you know, we watch this weekly, and as I mentioned, Maricopa County will be actually starting their health updates next Thursday, as we did for most of the 15 months. I will say, as Dr. Bailey mentioned, we learned that the CDC should be coming out with their school guidelines tomorrow, which will then give us some help and direction or guidance for our team to take on as well. And again, I do want to say thank you to the board and the staff and everyone. We're still in it. As a marathon runner, I would say, we're probably at mile 24, 25, so we're not done yet, but we've done a lot and we've learned a lot. And that's one thing I will say. We appreciate the board's feedback and their interests, also our focus groups, families. And we will be following up, as we already talked about with Esther and things. So we definitely look forward to it, but we're not quite done yet. And I do want to say that to folks, it's not quite behind us, but we've certainly come past the majority of it. With that, my team and I are always willing to take questions.
Board? Just out of curiosity, if the matrix were to increase into the red zone, or with the new law that's out there, we would not be able to mandate wearing masks, correct?
President Adams, members of the board, members of the audience, that is actually Mrs. Whaley's question, which is, and we'll have to look at that tomorrow to see if they did say the only mandating entity is, and I don't know if it's the state ADHS or maybe it's Maricopa County, so we'll definitely have to look at it tomorrow. Yeah, we'd have to follow that. I know that before, if your mitigation strategies were holding, then even if the numbers move, they wanted to see how your mitigation strategies, and Dr. Bailey listed the 5 of them, but we'll have to look at that closely, because if it does say, as Ms. Whaley said, I'll assume it's correct, is if Maricopa County Health is that, then they'll have to be updating us pretty quickly on that, yeah.
I appreciate it. Okay, with no other questions, and thank you very much, team, for the report, as always. That's going to bring us to, we're going to go, I need a motion to recess the regular meeting to go into executive session. May I have a motion? Did I miss something?
Request for future agenda items.
There you go. I'm consistent, guys. Please forgive me. Executive session. Request for, so then we have a request for, does anybody have any future agenda items or reports? Thank you, and I do apologize. With that, may I have a motion to move into executive session? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're recessed. Apologize, guys.
Oh, my mic's on. But my computer's not.
We're hot. All right. I'm going to try to see this. So- Can you scroll up, please?
Or down,
I'm assuming that we're,
is there a certain language out? I want to make sure I say it right, or
well,
just make a motion.
can you, well, we'll just go ahead and make the motion. But I'd like to, well, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and reconvene the board meeting, if everybody's okay with that. With that, we are back in session. And then, and Shannon, you know we can't see it, right? Did you have it? Let me see it. It's the agenda. Do you have it up? Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Reconvene.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Stop, I'm sorry. We've already called the board back into session, we've done that. So now we're on to action item, and that is, and Ms. Welly, if you'd be kind enough to, because I can't read it, I apologize, would you be kind enough to make a motion regarding Dr. Stanton's contract?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the contract as discussed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, good job. And board, if I may, before we adjourn, just thank you for, again, doing your due diligence and being prepared for things. Those you newbies are really doing a great job. So thank you for this. Ms. Welly, thank you for what you're doing and with all your assistance. And I will not be at the next meeting. I have a business engagement that I cannot get out of. And so I thank you for facilitating next board meeting. And those that are left in the room, thank you all. And with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we are done at 8:43.
Thank you.